Good afternoon there. You know, each time I come to this pulpit, I'm very nervous. Would never believe that. Anyway, I want to really thank the young people for their presentation this morning and for being responsible, so to speak, for Youth Day. You know, the youth is the future of the church. We all know that. And I can't tell you how many congregations I've been to in North America, and I've been to quite a bit. And I'm the youngest person. Serious. I'm dead serious. So the future of the church lies in our young people. So let's nurture as best as we can. I also like that presentation on time. In fact, the presentation I did on Friday night, I was contemplating, I had a choice, the one on time and the one I did. And just looking back at it now, it would have been a perfect blend for the sermonette. But don't worry, in the future you'll get it at some point. I really, from the depths of my heart, I really want to thank the leadership here, Pastor Bowen and the team, for recognition. Because, you know, when you have a calling and you realize you have to fulfill that calling, regardless of the struggles that lie ahead, you just have to try and fulfill that calling. So I need your prayers as we taggle along. You know, not myself, but all the elders in the ministry serving God. And I truly appreciate it. I just want to let you know that. If I talk more about it, I'm going to break up. I'll be keeping my eyes out for those people I left on the dance floor last night. You notice I said the word left? Because I left at a very critical time. My type of music just started to blare across the room, and I had to leave. And I tell you, so I saw some legs there, you know, doing their thing. And, you know, it was truly a blessing for me in a sense. A blessing, I'll tell you why. I grew up in a bar. My parents owned a bar. And it had a jukebox. You know, anybody here know a jukebox? Okay. So all of those songs that were playing, you know, the memories came flooding back. I remember the drunkards I had to deal with in my teenage years. Some of the choruses that you sing here, I learned them from the bar, not Sunday school. Because those drunkards in there, when they're ready to mock God, that's all they sang. So, in a sense, you know, I learned something from the bar. So last night was really memorable in a sense for me. But we are here to worship the King, right? We are here to adore the King. The last chorus here will just blend perfectly in what I want to say today. The title of this sermon is Behold Your King. But before I go into it, I want to pose some questions to all of us here today. I want to ask you, how sure are you that your King exists? How sure are you? There are some realities that we have to deal with. If you have an inquiring mind, a searching mind, and you go back to the roots, if you're weak in the faith, it could cause some problems for you. Let me tell you, the Roman system had one of the most sophisticated in recording births and death. In fact, some of our registrar general department and some birth registry that we have here is patterned off the Roman system. But guess what? There's not a single birth record of Jesus Christ. Not a single, no trace. The trial before Pontius Pilate, let me tell you again, in the archives in the Romans, all those things are recorded. All their trials are recorded. But guess what? Not a single word about Jesus Christ. All the inscriptions and the poetry and so on by those poets of the time, historians, not a single word about Jesus Christ. There was no historian alive at the time of Jesus who wrote about him. They all came after, not while he was on earth. How do you answer those? Is your king real? For many years there have been debates about the historical Jesus. Where is he? And when you talk about the historical Jesus, please don't use this, because they're not going to use this. The Bible. It's not recognized. So I want us to think about this as we go along, because I'm going to try to paint a portrait of the king we come here to adore. But I want you to fully understand some things that you should understand, that one day perhaps people are going to ask you about our Jesus, our king. Paul, the Apostle Paul, is silent on the birth of Jesus Christ. All the private letters and the so on in Roman literature does not mention Jesus Christ. There have been many kings in our records who have lived. Some notorious, some evil, a few that perhaps in the time of Israel could be described as good. We have the evil ones, the Jeroboams, Nadab, the Baasha, the Elah, the Zimri, the Tibnah, the Omri, the Ahab. One of the worst, Ahab. We have these men, and all there in the chronicles of the Israelitish kings, all these kings are mentioned. We know Ahab did some terrible things. Terrible, terrible things. He married a woman called Jezebel. You know, Jezebel is a term in Jamaica that is derogatory. When someone describes a lady as a Jezebel, there's a lot of connotations to it, because she was an evil woman. But Ahab failed miserably as a good king. 1 Kings 21:25 tells us, "But there was no one who sold himself to do evil in the sight of the Lord as did Ahab, incited by his wife Jezebel." He has been described as the evil genius of the Judean nation. There was a king that I am choosing deliberately to focus a few minutes on, who lived in the time of Christ. There has been a lot of, in fact, earlier this year, there was an archaeological dig that found traces of his dynasty, the man King Herod. And yet, he existed in the time of Jesus. No mention of Jesus, but mention of Herod. The rabbis call him a madman who murdered his own family. He considered himself a Jew, of course for political reasons. Called himself King of the Jews. That's why he wanted to kill Jesus. Well, he was ruling largely over a Jewish population. But may I introduce to you King Herod the Great, as many historians refer to him, who was appointed king of Judea by the Romans in 37 BC, and he reigned during the time of Jesus Christ. Josephus, the Jewish historian, writing in his Jewish Antiquities, emphasized the tyrannical reign of Herod. He would have killed his own family to solidify his kingship. Kingship. because I want you to keep that word in your mind. Kingship. This is where our aspirations are. And we are assured in the scriptures of kingship. But in order for us to really claim that title, we have to have a king. We have to have a king. A king that has been denigrated in modern times as some mere historical figure. And I get peeved when I hear people just talking about Jesus as some ordinary historical figure, when we know he's very God on earth when he came in the flesh. That he's no God exalted on high. That he's the very God who is going to burst through those clouds and he's going to step foot on the Mount of Olives. And that you and I will be changed by that very act. I get annoyed when they're comparing Jesus to Muhammad. I get annoyed. We're talking about the Savior of the world. We're not talking about a pian person. If you know what I mean, translation. Ordinary person. Or just a belittled person. Don't worry, I'll tell them later if I don't do it now. Yes. We have to stand up for the King. You're going to be tried and tested on that. You're going to be drawn before you're going to be caught in different scenarios. You know, earlier this year, I was in a training program, and there was they're teaching sensitivity at the workplace, and tolerance and so on, and in keeping with human rights laws and so on. And so they asked all the trainees to come up in a row, and those who oppose men and women in the same using the same bathroom should just hold their fort, and those who support it should go forward. And there was a line drawn, and every single person in that line, 17 of us, except 2 people, a Hindu and myself, we stood ground. And when those people stepped forward, I could see the eyes looking at us, because we said, no, bathroom for man and bathroom for woman are different thing. Those are the situations. Listen, anything happen up north, you're going to catch it. Not in Jamaica. As long as you watch cable, you're going to catch it. Because things that happen, or things that occurred 10 years ago, and you see them happening now, you never dream it would happen. But that's how the media works. It makes you get used to it, if you know what I mean. You will have to stand up for your king. Believe me, the time is coming when I know this will be outlawed as a hate literature. Anything that is in it. So we just have to make sure we know our king a little better. And here I'm trying to paint that portrait. From the biblical perspective, we are familiar with the account in Matthew 2:16 during the birth of Christ, when Herod felt threatened by the birth of a new king that could undermine his rulership. And so what he did, he ordered the execution of babies 2 years and under. Babies. Since 510 BC, it's estimated that there have been well over 100 rulers, mainly kings who have abdicated their throne. They run left it. Edward VIII of Great Britain, Louis Philippe of France, Charles IV of Spain. These men have abandoned their responsibility. The king that we worship, will he ever abandon us? There have been over 350 coups and attempted coups since 632 BC, where one leader swapped for another, corruption swapped for corruption. Can our king fail us? Will he ever fail us? We know Israel wanted a king, and God said, okay, go ahead. Saul came, king, but he was eventually rejected. So Saul died for his trespass, 1 Chronicles 10:13, which he committed against the Lord, because of the word of the Lord, which he did not keep, and also because he asked counsel of a medium, making inquiry of it, and did not inquire of the Lord. Therefore God killed him and turned the kingdom to David, the son of Jesse. So here we have a link now to David, son of Jesse. Now we have, along the prophetic lines, a king who's, when he came to be incarnated here on earth after the order of Melchizedek, he came to inherit something. Isaiah 11:1, to inherit something. Something that we, during Christmas time, you just hear they read some of these things, but they don't really go deeper to find out what it is. So we read in Isaiah 11:1, and that is why we are here. The deeper meaning here is that there shall come forth out of the rod of the stem of Jesse a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, and the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. And he shall not judge after the sight of his own eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. In verse 6 we read, and this is the time when the young people sang a while ago, they were talking about that time that is coming, when the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. A little child shall lead them. Isaiah 9. Verse 6 says, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And verse 7 says, of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom. So we are here to worship the King. But there are distractions, brethren. There are distractions to draw away your attention from this King. What he stands for, what he's about to do, what he doesn't tolerate. Nowadays everybody want to make their own little God. They don't want to listen to the God of the heavens. They want to make their own little God. He sets down rules and regulations for us to follow. But no, we don't want that. And so it has reached a stage now where they can question whether he really existed, whether he is in fact a historical figure. Well, as I said earlier, if you don't have the inquiring mind to search, to satisfy your curiosity, there's a lot of evidence of Jesus outside the Bible. But you won't hear it in the media. You won't hear it. There was an expedition, I think about 3 years ago, I don't know if you saw it, there's a documentary on it. I won't quote it, I don't think all of it is, I think there are some of aspects of it is erroneous. But the conclusion by the archaeologists was that Jesus was buried, his family was buried under an apartment in Jerusalem. And what they did actually is they built a robotic arm with a camera attached to it, got city officials permission to dig down below the apartment, and the camera went down there, and they found all kind of tombs and so on. But to me, that's some archaeologists have dismissed it and said it's not genuine, because the conclusion was Jesus married to a woman and went off to live somewhere else. That they found in the tomb Jesus' body with 2 children by his side. So all kind of stuff with that. So these things happen, right? but the point I'm trying to make is that the dig itself, in those first century, the tomb was in fact first century, just that we don't know whose tomb it is. But they have some interesting facts there, because on one of the ossuaries, that's the concrete block or whatever they use to store bones and so on it was a symbol of a fish. In early first century history, the fish was important. It was a symbol of the resurrection because of Jonah, being compared with Jonah and so on. So the cross wasn't symbol, the fish was. So at least it brought up that. But I've spent some time outside of the Bible to look at this extra biblical evidence for the king that we come here to worship. I know Josephus is the most popular one, but I wouldn't even go, everybody knows Josephus, wrote about the Christ. They try to debunk it. They say it's fraudulent. They added words to it. But there was a seminar, Jesus seminar, people, I think 39 out of 58 of them concluded that Josephus' writing is genuine. Nevertheless, in my research, I found recently, I don't know if anyone here ever heard of Julius Africanus. He's a rare historian, one of the best, but guess what? Most of his writings have been lost. They only find in fragments, pieces here and pieces there. And they found a piece of his writing, and guess what's on it? He is describing what happened the day Jesus Christ was crucified. He's writing how darkness covered for many hours the day, midday was dark, and how thunder was rolling and so on. But because it's just a little scrap of his writing, you don't hear a lot about it. He was not a Christian or a believer in Christ. He was totally secular. There's another fellow called Pliny the Younger. He was a scribe of the emperor, and he was sent as a kind of spy to check up on the Christians to see what was happening. You can read it on the internet. It's there, his letter that he wrote back to the emperor, talking about this group that met on strict days and how they follow one who was crucified. These are historians who never believed in Christ, and they're writing about them. Tacitus was a Roman senator. The best of the Roman historians is being described. In his annals, he's writing about this Christos, Jesus Christ. The list goes on. Lucian of Samosata, he refers, another historian. Suetonius, Celsus, Marabar Serapion, all of these men wrote about this Christ. To me, that's more evidence than we need to prove that Jesus exists. But the skeptics always have come back with something. You read their side of the story, if you're not careful, you get caught into some of what they're trying to use to debunk him. Of course, they have all of that. Certificates? Why would not the Roman system have a birth certificate and a death certificate of the Christ? He was seen as a revolutionary figure who came to upset the apple cart, both from a religious and a political perspective. Why wouldn't he be mentioned? In Jamaica, growing up, my father always said, If you don't have common sense, you have nothing. In my time living here, I've known a lot of people who don't know the day they're born. They don't have any birth certificate. In our system in the 20th century. So you go back to the time of Christ, hundreds of years going back. You think it's unusual if someone's birth was not mentioned? A lot of historians have argued that it's the norm. But the pundits, they ply on these, they hammer home these points. No birth certificates, it's a big deal. The poets, philosophers, there's a Roman historian called Philo, another well-respected man who has written a lot, and he mentions Jesus Christ. But it's in the Roman archives. I didn't check on that. But so we have all of that evidence. But guess what, brethren? Here's what it comes down to. When it comes to our King, and whether we are worshiping, whether he exists or not, you know what it comes down to? It's a little 5-letter word. Faith. That is why some people may walk in here now from off the street and look at us, maybe tomorrow, Sunday is not so bad, but maybe tomorrow, and say, what are these people doing here? You mean these people leave all the job and come here? To eat food and sing praise and that's it? They would never understand. But that's how the carnal mind is. But all faith tells us that this little flesh here that I'm pinching right here, that soon swivel up and riddled with all kind of aging factors, that one day is going to go. And all we have to live on is that little word, 5-letter word. Because when this body goes down 6 feet, I don't even know if they're burying them 6 feet now. Because you go into some cemeteries, it's upstairs, down there, you know that. Not upstairs, downstairs. I mean shelves. Yeah, one casket up here, another one under there. That's how it's being done nowadays. But the reality is, when these fingers and these bones go down, what next? What next? You walk into a hospital and you get the reality of what life can be. When you hear the shrieks and the agonies, someone, all of you at some point must have experienced someone close to you who have passed on. And it dawns on you that what you're doing has to be the right thing. This cannot be, life just cannot be getting all your desires and you live good and you go boof dead and that's it. Cannot be. If that were the case, I don't know, God forbid. But sometimes some things cross your mind. Suppose nothing no go so. Translation. Suppose there's nothing to what we're doing. You get them? Be honest. You get them? I get them. Maybe not in my later years, but earlier. I get them. Suppose all of what we're doing is for naught. Would it have worth the effort to do it? That's the question. Would it have worth the effort to do it? Because each time you go to your bed at night, guess what? You're living on a hope that even if you don't wake tomorrow morning, when you rise in the split second, you're going to rise to a new age. You're going to rise to a new age. But the the man who is not involved in all of this, the man who God calls and he's skylarking, he can't say that. This world is filled with hopelessness. Young